Let's bring in our man Keith Smith from Spotrac. He's been watching the Sacramento. Keith, I'm so curious. How do you watch every single basketball game every single night? It's incredible.
I don't watch every single one, but so there's two parts to this. One, I keep an extremely organized schedule of games that I want to try to see, especially early in the season. I'm trying to see all these teams as much as I can. Second part, the real key, condensed games for the win.
There you go, baby. Yeah.
Games, yeah, with all the free throws cut out, all the in-between stuff cut out, and you just plug right through them, and you're in and out in about 45 minutes.
See, and that's Keith. You see, you're a basketball nerd just like me. I go to the condensed all possessions, clip as opposed to the 10-minute joint, because I'm watching the 10-minute one and I know it's just going to be makes every time. Like I want to see, I don't need to see the entire game, but I want to see, okay, the guy missed 3 straight shots and then he hit one or what. I need the all possession. So that takes a little longer with the 40 minutes. But yeah, I like that more than the 10-minute, just all makes recap.
Yeah, without a doubt. You need to get in there because for me, I'm trying to see offense, defense. What does the guy look like? Sometimes some of the best possessions in a game don't result in a make, and you want to make sure you catch those. So yeah, absolutely. But those are key. I wouldn't be able to do that if those didn't exist.
Keith, let's talk a little bit about the Sacramento Kings because you wrote about them at least most recently after the win against Utah, and you pointed something out that a lot of Kings fans have pointed out. You mentioned you've got to find a way to keep Keon Ellis in this rotation. He does things other Kings guards can't do. What did you see from Keon that is so important to what the Sacramento Kings need to do moving forward?
Yeah, he just is. He's their best perimeter defender on the team, and it's probably for me by a pretty good margin because he's got the size. He can super competitive, so he can defend the slightly bigger wings. He's good against either guard position, no matter who you put out there. So he's just so tough. And then offensively, I get it. There are some limitations there, but he's just a good connector. Whenever you watch the very best teams play, it's not that every single guy can shoot or every single guy is, great at putting the ball on the floor, but they all have that one guy that is, somebody who can, he can set a screen, roll, make a good decision, or he gets the ball moved to him and then he just keeps it moving and cycling. And he's just a smart player. You can see he kind of knows, like, all right, I'm never going to be the 25, 30 point per game guy on this team. My job is keep the ball moving, play defense. And you've got to have guys like that in the rotation, especially for a Kings team that has a lot of mouths to feed with guys who are score first guys, or guys who, if they're not score first, the guys who are score a lot guys. You got to have somebody in there who's willing to do the other stuff.
Keith, you're spot on, man. You're spot on. Over the summer, we really were big on Keon did a lot of really good things towards the end of the season. You got to find a way, maybe even start him or whatever. Then during the preseason, it looked a little wonky for the Kings offensively, and it was like, well, maybe you do need Herter more than you realized. And we kind of got to the point, or me, I should speak for myself, got to the point where it's like, man, I like Keon, but I just don't know where it fits. You want to have all these guys in here playing super minutes and all this other stuff. And then you watch him like you did in Utah. And it's like, man, I don't care if it's 10 minutes. I don't care if that ends up being 17 to 20 minutes. You got to find a way to have him in the rotation. He can't be a situational guy because at his best, he is just too disruptive on the defensive end and almost a game-changing type player on the defensive end that you can't just have that sitting on the bench.
Yeah, without a doubt. Again, I go back to this Kings team. They're going to score. They're going to be okay. They've got way too many guys that are good at scoring. But for them to really take that next step and get back to being not even a playing team, but like a surefire playoff team in that top 6, and then win or further, right? If that's where we ultimately want to get to, you've got to have some defenders on the floor, and they're better than they're given credit for. I think last year, one of the things that I learned as last season went along was they were kind of screamed that the whole is better than the sum of its parts. If you looked at it, you're kind of like, man, there's no like super standout individual defender, but they were just kind of sound together as a unit, and that's what had them in the top half of the league. And you get Keon Ellis out there, and he's just making plays that other guys are not going to make, and that's so big. I just, again, I go back to whenever I've watched the very best teams in the league, they all have a guy like that who's doing those things, and he seems like the guy in that game where he didn't play at all earlier in the week, where it's like, whoa, why are we not playing him at all? that just felt very off to me. And hopefully now we're in a spot where he's going to be in there night in, night out.
Keith, you mentioned the Sacramento Kings offense will be just fine on a night-to-night basis. Obviously, that's proven to very much be the case, but there were a lot of doubts about DeMar DeRozan's fit on this team. Has this fit like you thought, or maybe a little better, or what was your idea of DeMar DeRozan joining the Sacramento Kings and what that looked like?
For where we're at, a week into the season, this is about where I thought they'd be. It's been a little bumpy because you're adding a guy he's a high usage guy. This is a team that was so based the last couple of seasons around the Fox, the bonus 2-man game, that you've added another wrinkle in there. And I always like to remind people, NBA teams are not fantasy teams. You're not just out there collecting, talent and saying, great, let's go. These guys are all, it doesn't work to say they all score 20 points per game, so they have 100 points. That's not how it works. They have to fit together. But I think you're already starting to see some glimpses of, okay, this is how we can make this work. And I think Mike Brown, what he's also learning is kind of the staggering of, all right, these are the groups I want to have together. This is the moments where I can lean on this. I can lean on DeRozan and the things he does a little bit better here. Here I can lean on Fox. Here I can lean on Sabonis and whatever those lineup combinations are, and we'll continue to tweak and adjust those. The way teams treat preseason now in the NBA, where they're not, often guys miss games, they played, a half of a game or so. I'd like to think the first at least 2-3 weeks of the season, and for a lot of teams, is like extended preseason where you're figuring stuff out, and you can kind of see that the Kings are out there out on the fly.
Yeah. Keith, what do you think the ceiling is for this team? I know DeMar DeRozan said they can get to the Western Conference Finals. Do you look at them as being able to reach those type of heights, or do they need a little bit more?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they could. Things would have to break right for them. The West has got a lot of good teams in it. You've got, clearly, I think they're behind Oklahoma City. I'm still going to lean. I know they're struggled out of the gate, but I'm still going to lean on Denver because of the history. Dallas did it last year. Minnesota is really good. So the Kings are kind of in that next tier of teams where it is, all right, they're in there. But just like we saw last year, all it takes is the right matchup to kind of go your way, or the wrong guy for the other team happens to be out for a week or something like that. And the next thing you know, you've gone further. So I think for them, it would be, let's get in that top 6. Let's not mess around in the playing tournament. Too many things can go wrong. You have one shooting night and all of a sudden your season is over. Because as I put it, in the West, we're going to have the teams not make the play-in tournament, then we're going to be like, oh man, like they're good, like actual probable good teams that aren't even going to be in the postseason. Never mind having to fight your way through the play-in tournament. So I think that's where it's going to get a little tricky for them there. But I think my ideal would be, let's play for the top 6. If one of those teams that we expect to be really good stumbles, like if Denver can't quite figure it out, why not us? Why can't we be a top 4 team and be hosting the first round series?
Now, this isn't why we called you, Keith, but I'm going to ask anyways. Can you sell me on Denver?
Yeah, Jokic.
Okay, all right, that's fine. That's fair. That's fair.
That's pretty good sales pitch, right? I trust the infrastructure. You still have Jokic, you still have Murray. Murray's starting to look more like Murray over the last little bit here, which that's extremely encouraging, because over the summer and through the beginning part of the camp and preseason, didn't really look like himself. So that's encouraging. You still have Aaron Gordon. You've got Michael Porter Jr. Those guys are there. And then after that, it's is one of the kids going to step forward? Is another one of them going to? Do they have a trade maybe in them that we don't see right now today? But at the end of the day, I'm going to trust Michael Malone. Usually has his teams playing pretty well, and I'm going to really put a lot of faith in Nikola Jokic.
Understood.
Keith, I also want to ask you, before you came on, we were talking about Keegan Murray and what he's done so far and what the expectations are for him. I always like to see what the outsiders outside of Sacramento feel about some of the players. What do you see the ceiling of Keegan Murray being, or what does he need to do for this team to reach another level?
Yeah, when we were going through that draft cycle with Keegan Murray, I had him, by the time we hit draft day, on par with the other 3 guys who were picked in front of him. I loved him. I loved his game, because I thought he was going to come in and just be somebody who could really contribute right away, and that's proven to be there. But there's a pretty big gap between contributor and really good player. All kinds of guys are contributors in the NBA. Only a handful can push for the All-Star team. And I think Keegan Murray has that in him. I do kind of wonder, are we going to see that? Meaning, are we going to get there stats-wise? Because that's, a big part of, what accolades do you get in the league? You have to pile up some stats. Where I think the Kings he's always going to be kind of the fourth guy, maybe even the fifth guy in some of their lineup constructions. And that makes it a little harder for him to stand up statistically. But as long as he's playing really good defense, he's got to lock in as that defensive forward for them. And if he's making the open shots when they come his way, which he should see a steady diet of with the other talent he's playing with on a regular basis, I think all of a sudden we're going to have people like, wait a minute, this guy, for now, people might start thinking about it, which is the comp I made at the start of the year. They made their adjustments to the roster and rotation. He's like Harrison Barnes plus, like what the Kings got out of him the last couple of years. And that's a pretty big, step forward for him. And then from there, let's see where it kind of goes as other players age out a little bit and maybe he takes on a little bit more. I think he's got it in him, but I'm very curious to see if it is actually there.
Excellent stuff as always, Keith. Always love talking to you, my man. Thanks for carving out a few minutes for us.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, man.
Yes, sir, man.